In this video, I'm going to be reviewing War for the Planet of the Apes. Can it be as good as the last one? Well, stick around. We'll find out. Hey guys, my name is Ryan Lavin and I review movies to help you manage your expectations so when you walk out of the theater, you're not left disappointed. So now that I've seen War for the Planet of the Apes, I think it is safe to say it's not quite as good as the movie that came before it, but it still has a very satisfying conclusion. This story actually wraps up much better than a lot of other franchises I've seen recently. So if you're new to the franchise, these movies follow Cesar, the leader of a tribe of apes that have become self-aware as a result of a man-made virus that has given them the intellect to rival our own. Now, if you see the trailers, you know War for the Planet of the Apes doesn't really give you a whole lot of information going into it. What you do need to know is this. At the end of the last movie, we're told that there's a group of soldiers coming down to take on Cesar and his band of apes. Now, this movie picks up 2 years after that. The war is still waging between these two groups, and something happens early on that sets Cesar on a path that we've never seen him on before. Now, one thing that's great about this movie is that it follows Cesar's perspective from start to finish. Now, I know a lot of people felt like the last movie did that, but the truth is there were a few human characters that had their own story arcs that didn't involve Cesar at all. But that's not the case here. In this movie, anytime you see any human character at all, it's because Cesar can physically lay eyes on them. Anytime you see Woody Harrelson's character, the Colonel, it's because Cesar can see the Colonel. And I loved every bit of that. So for me personally, if you want to make a great sequel, there is one must you have to do. And that is you got to make sure your current story feels like a natural progression from the story that came before it. And what that means is you have to continue some of the themes that you've already touched upon in your previous movies. And I think War for the Planet of the Apes does an excellent job of that. Koba is still very much a factor in this story, and they haven't forgotten about the simian flu. And for that reason, it feels like this trilogy as a whole is one overarching story from start to finish. So there are definitely some things I didn't like about this movie, and I feel like a lot of them can be summed up by simply saying the story just didn't seem as tight this go around. There are definitely some weak spots along the way, and that's saying something because this story ultimately is pretty simple. I mean, if you go over to IMDb right now, you will find a synopsis that is literally one sentence long. Now, just because you have a simple story doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, as long as you use that story to really enhance your character and allow us to get to know them better. And it's clear that's what they were going for when it came to Cesar. But to be honest with you, I felt more connected to him in the previous movie than I did in this one. And they also didn't really use it to develop any other characters. Now, I will say there's one character I did enjoy. It's the little girl that kind of accompanies them along the way, but even her character had problems. There's one point where it's as if she completely forgot her own backstory. I mean, she begins to act like someone who had spent her entire life with these animals instead of someone who had only spent a week or a month with them. I'll also say that there's a plot point that comes a little bit later on in the movie that only makes sense if every soldier in the entire compound is blind. Now, to be honest with you, I'm probably making some of these problems out to be bigger than they really were because they didn't bother me all that much, but at the end of the day, I did notice them, which tells me the writing could have used a little bit more work. So the last negative I want to mention is that the title is a bit deceiving. War for the Planet of the Apes gives you the impression that there is going to be this big battle between man and ape. And while there is a little bit of that at the beginning, for the most part, this movie is very much a drama. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a payoff at the end, but it's not quite what you expect it to be. So I've been struggling for a while now to figure out a rating system that I actually liked, and I decided finally just to take a page out of Jeremy Johns' book and come up with my own. So here's what I came up with. Why am I still here? These are movies that I'm sitting in a theater and I realize if I completely missed the final act, I would not care. Complete waste of money. These are the movies that I tolerate all the way to the end and in retrospect, wish I hadn't. Guilty pleasure. Obviously, it's a terrible movie, but someone's gotta love it. Worth the second look means it's worth the price of admission, even if you see it 2 or 3 times. Add to your collection is one you would add to your collection. And finally, the last tier is personal top 10. This is that rare and elusive rating reserved for movies in the last last 5 years that hold a special place in my heart. Now, keeping all that in mind, War for the Planet of the Apes is definitely worth a second look. So those are my thoughts, but why don't you jump in the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Do you think this franchise should end here, or would you like to see it go on to produce another movie? And as always, if you made it to this point in the video, it means you must have liked it, so why don't you go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and make sure you hit the subscribe button on your way out so you're kept up to date next time I get ready to upload a new video.